The rain fell like accusatory fingers against her skin, each droplet a reminder of her failures. Maya huddled beneath the bus shelter's meager protection, her thin jacket soaked through within minutes of the downpour beginning. The cold had seeped into her bones, but it was nothing compared to the chill of dread spreading through her chest at the sight of the out-of-service sign flashing mockingly on the last bus of the night. Her hand instinctively moved to her slightly swollen belly, 5 months of new life growing within her. Her phone displayed 11:47 p.m. With a menacing 3% battery and no rideshare apps she could afford. Mrs. Chen would be furious if she called again to ask her to stay longer with her plants and mail, while Maya was away from her apartment for yet another late shift. 16 hours into a double shift at Rosewood Diner, her feet screamed in cheap non-slip shoes, and the scent of grease had permanently embedded itself in her pores. Tips had been miserable. Rent was due in 3 days, and now, 5 miles from home with no way to get there except her exhausted legs. The storm had emptied the streets, transforming the usually busy avenue into an abandoned river of reflections and shadows. Maya Parker, 26 years old, pregnant waitress, invisible to the world unless she was pouring coffee or being hounded for late payments. The distant purr of an engine cut through the rainfall's white noise. Headlights pierced the watery curtain, illuminating the deserted street with twin beams that seemed to search rather than simply light the way. She squinted as the vehicle slowed. A sleek black Mercedes, so out of place in this neighborhood that it might as well have been a spaceship. Her heart skipped when it pulled alongside her, water rippling around its tires. The back window slid down with mechanical precision, revealing nothing but darkness within. "You shouldn't be walking in this weather," a voice emerged, textured like aged whiskey over rough stones. Maya caught fragments of the man inside, the gleam of a heavy ring on long fingers, the sharp cut of an expensive suit jacket, the scent of cedar and something metallic that cut through the rain. "I'm fine," she lied, water dripping from her lashes, obscuring her vision. "No, you're not," he stated with quiet authority that made her unable to argue. Self-preservation warred with desperation as he asked where she was headed. Never get into cars with strangers was lesson 1 in every woman's handbook, but hypothermia was becoming a real possibility. Maya awoke with a start, disoriented by unfamiliar softness beneath her. Instead of her cramped studio apartment with its water-stained ceiling, she found herself in a spacious bedroom draped in luxury. Morning light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, partially covered by heavy curtains. Panic surged through her as she bolted upright, one hand protectively covering her pregnant belly. The sheets beneath her were finer than anything she'd ever touched, the room larger than her entire apartment. "Hello?" she called, voice cracking with fear. The only response was silence. She scrambled from the bed, noticing she was wearing silk pajamas she'd never seen before. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she tried the nearest door, a walk-in closet larger than her entire apartment. The next revealed a palatial bathroom with marble and gold fixtures. The third door opened to a hallway lined with artwork that probably cost more than she'd earn in several lifetimes. Standing at attention like sentinels were 2 men in dark suits, expressions professionally blank. "Where am I?" she demanded, fear making her voice shrill. One of the men stepped forward. "Ms. Parker, Mr. Blackwood is waiting to speak with you downstairs." His tone was respectful, but firm, suggesting that declining was not an option. The mention of her name sent another wave of anxiety through her. They knew who she was. She pushed past them, determined to find an exit from this gilded prison. Her bare feet were silent against the plush carpet as she hurried down the hallway, the men following at a discreet distance. She descended a grand staircase that opened into a vast foyer with marble floors. The smell of coffee guided her through an archway into a kitchen that could have housed her entire apartment twice over. There, sitting at a massive island reading a tablet, was the man from the car. In daylight, he was even more imposing. Sharp features, dark hair with touches of silver at the temples, and eyes that assessed her with cool calculation. "Good morning, Maya," he said, setting aside his tablet. "I trust you slept well." His voice carried the same quiet authority she remembered from the night before, a man accustomed to being obeyed without question. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Please, join me for breakfast." "Who are you?" she demanded, maintaining her distance. "Why am I here? What happened last night?" The questions tumbled out, each fueled by a growing sense of dread. Her last memory was getting into his car, the warmth enveloping her after the freezing rain. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Sebastian Blackwood," he answered simply. "As for why you're here, You passed out in my car. The doctor said it was a combination of exhaustion, low blood sugar, and mild hypothermia. Not surprising, given your condition. His eyes flickered briefly to her pregnant belly. You had no right to bring me here, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. I need to go home. Sebastian's expression darkened slightly. There was a gas leak in your apartment building last night. The entire block was evacuated. You wouldn't have had anywhere to go. The revelation about her apartment struck Maya like a physical blow, her knees weakening as she gripped the kitchen counter for support. Sebastian watched her reaction with calculating eyes that seemed to miss nothing, not the trembling of her hands, nor the protective way she curved her arm around her belly. You can verify it yourself, he said, sliding a tablet across the marble countertop with a news article confirming the evacuation. Her eyes scanned the headline, recognizing photos of her dilapidated building surrounded by emergency vehicles, tenants huddled in shock on the sidewalk. A woman in a chef's uniform entered silently, placing a plate of fresh fruit and whole grain toast before Maya, the aroma of butter and cinnamon momentarily distracting her from the catastrophe unfolding in her life. You need to eat, Sebastian stated, not a suggestion, but a gentle command, his eyes flickering to her pregnant belly. As she reluctantly took a bite, hunger overriding suspicion, Sebastian folded his hands before him, his posture relaxed, yet somehow still radiating power. I have a proposition for you, Maya Parker, one that could solve many of your current difficulties. The way he said her name, like he'd researched every detail of her existence, sent a chill down her spine despite the warmth of the luxurious penthouse. She swallowed hard, setting down her fork with deliberate care. How do you know my name? Who are you really? His smile was brief, more acknowledgement than warmth. I told you, Sebastian Blackwood. As for how I know you, he gestured vaguely at the space around them. I make it my business to know everything about people who enter my world, particularly those who interest me. Maya's spine stiffened at the implication. I'm not interested in becoming someone's charity case or whatever else you might be suggesting. Her hand instinctively moved to her stomach, a gesture that didn't escape Sebastian's notice. His dark eyes followed the movement, something unreadable flickering across his features. The father isn't in the picture, I assume? The question came so unexpectedly that Maya nearly choked on her tea, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment and anger. That's none of your business, she snapped, surprised by her own boldness. Rather than anger, a hint of approval crossed Sebastian's face, as if her defiance had confirmed something important to him. He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a more intimate tone. 2 months ago, a woman who looked remarkably like you entered Rosewood Diner during my business meeting with associates. She wasn't you, of course, but the resemblance was uncanny. Maya's blood ran cold as realization dawned. Her cousin Lily, who'd borrowed her uniform for a quick cash job while visiting. Lily, who'd disappeared without a trace shortly after, leaving only a cryptic text about heading west for a fresh start. Sebastian's eyes held hers, unblinking and intense. That woman overheard things she shouldn't have, took something that wasn't hers, and disappeared. I've been looking for her ever since, until fate delivered you to me instead, her pregnant cousin, desperate and alone in the rain. Hours later, Maya paced the perimeter of the guest suite that had become her gilded prison, Sebastian's revelation about Lily echoing in her mind. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a sleek downtown high-rise, offering breathtaking views of a city that had never shown her any kindness until now. Security cameras tracked her movements in hallways, and Sebastian's men, Marco and Davis, maintained a polite but unwavering presence, escorting her for her safety whenever she left the suite. Their weapons, discreetly holstered beneath tailored jackets, were a constant reminder of the power dynamics at play. Sebastian had left for business after their breakfast confrontation, leaving Maya to absorb the reality of her situation. Her apartment inaccessible, her meager possessions in limbo, and her identity mistaken for her wayward cousin, who'd apparently stolen from a man who screamed dangerous with every calculated move he made. The sound of the elevator arriving pulled Maya from her thoughts as she stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights blink to life against the darkening sky. Sebastian stepped into the penthouse, his expression grim as he spoke in hushed tones with Marco, both men glancing in her direction. Maya straightened her spine, determined not to show fear as Sebastian approached. His formal suit exchanged for a more casual black sweater that did nothing to diminish his commanding presence. The doctor will be here within the hour, he announced without preamble, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. I don't need a doctor, Maya replied, instinctively cradling her belly. The baby and I are fine. The corner of Sebastian's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but something that hinted at grudging respect for her continued defiance. He moved to the bar, pouring himself 2 fingers of amber liquid. Humor me. 5 months along without proper prenatal care isn't ideal, especially considering your working conditions and nutritional status. Maya's cheeks burned with the casual assessment of her poverty, the reminder that this man had investigated every aspect of her life in his pursuit of Lily. How long do you plan to keep me here? She asked, voicing the question that had been burning in her mind all day. Sebastian studied her over the rim of his glass, his dark eyes unreadable. That depends entirely on when your cousin decides to return what she took from me. The deliberate vagueness sent a chill down Maya's spine, the implication clear. She was collateral, a pawn in whatever game Lily had foolishly initiated. The arrival of the doctor interrupted their standoff, a silver-haired woman with kind eyes that belied her brisk, professional demeanor. What surprised Maya was the obvious familiarity between the doctor and Sebastian, the subtle deference in the older woman's manner suggesting a relationship that extended beyond typical doctor-patient boundaries. Dr. Abernathy's examination was thorough but gentle, her concern for Maya and the baby seemingly genuine despite the unusual circumstances. Everything looks good considering, she finally announced, removing her stethoscope. But you're underweight, anemic, and showing signs of exhaustion that could complicate the pregnancy if not addressed. As the doctor packed her equipment, she turned to Sebastian with the authority of someone used to being obeyed, even by him. She needs rest, proper nutrition, and minimal stress. Which means, Sebastian, you need to clarify her situation rather than leaving her in this limbo. 3 days passed in strange domesticity, with Maya reluctantly settling into a routine within the luxurious confines of Sebastian's penthouse. Her body, responding to regular meals and actual rest, began to shed the bone-deep exhaustion that had become her constant companion during months of double shifts and worry. Each morning brought a new designer outfit in her size, laid out with silent expectation that she would join Sebastian for breakfast before he disappeared into his home office for hours of what sounded like terse, multilingual business calls. Maya used the time to explore the penthouse library, devouring books she'd never had time to read while maintaining a careful mental map of exits, security protocols, and routines. The baby, as if sensing the improved conditions, had become more active, tiny kicks and movements that Maya found herself tracking with growing attachment, despite the circumstances of her confinement. Sebastian had noticed too, his eyes occasionally lingering on her belly with an expression she couldn't quite decipher, something between curiosity and an older, deeper emotion. On the 4th night, unable to sleep despite the ridiculous thread count sheets and perfect temperature, Maya wandered to the kitchen for tea, only to find Sebastian seated at the island counter, suit jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms marked with unexpected scars. Before him lay scattered papers and an open bottle of whiskey. He looked up at her entrance, and for the first time since their encounter, Maya saw weariness etched in the lines around his eyes, a momentary glimpse behind the carefully controlled facade. Couldn't sleep? He asked, his voice rougher than usual, less guarded. The baby's practicing gymnastics tonight, Maya replied, one hand resting on her swollen belly where little feet or fists pushed against her ribs. Sebastian's eyes followed the movement, something like longing flashing across his features before disappearing behind his usual mask of control. The silence stretched between them, neither uncomfortable nor easy, as Maya prepared her tea, and Sebastian returned to his papers, the domesticity of the moment at odds with the reality of their situation. When her mug was full, she hesitated, then made a decision that surprised even herself. She sat across from him, close enough to see the documents were financial reports written in multiple languages. Your cousin, Sebastian finally said, breaking the silence without looking up, was dating Antonio Vasquez when she took what wasn't hers. The name meant nothing to Maya, but Sebastian's tone conveyed everything she needed to know. This Vasquez was dangerous. A rival, perhaps. Someone Sebastian viewed as a genuine threat. Maya's hands tightened around her mug, the warmth a poor defense against the chill his words sent through her. Lily and I aren't close, she admitted. After my parents died, she was the only family I had left. But we've always been different. Sebastian's gaze lifted to meet hers, something shifting in his assessment of her. Different how? He asked, closing the folder before him in a gesture that seemed significant somehow, as if he were choosing to focus fully on her for the first time. Lily chases excitement, danger even, Maya explained, surprised by her own candidness. I just wanted stability, a quiet life where I could. She trailed off, her hand moving unconsciously to her belly, to the future she'd been trying to build despite overwhelming odds. Understanding dawned in Sebastian's eyes, and for the first time, Maya saw him clearly, not just the dangerous man in the expensive suit, but someone shaped by his own past, his own choices and consequences. The father? He asked, the question gentle in a way she hadn't expected. Maya took a deep breath before answering his question about the baby's father. A doctor at the free clinic. He was doing a rotation there, temporary. By the time I found out I was pregnant, he'd moved across the country for a residency. The memory still stung, the swift rejection when she'd called with the news. Sebastian's jaw tightened, a flicker of something dangerous crossing his features. He abandoned you? The question was deceptively soft, but Maya sensed the steel beneath, a reaction that seemed disproportionate to her simple story. He offered money for alternatives, she said carefully, her hand protectively cradling her belly. When I refused, he made it clear he wanted no part of this baby's life. His family has connections. He said they'd fight me for custody if I ever tried to name him. The glass in Sebastian's hand creaked dangerously under his tightening grip. I could find him easily, he said, the casual statement carrying weight far beyond its simple words. Men who shirk their responsibilities should face consequences. Maya shook her head, surprised by her own calmness in the face of his implied threat. That's not what I want, she said firmly. This baby deserves better than a father who views them as an inconvenience or a lawsuit waiting to happen. A tentative understanding formed between them in that quiet kitchen moment, but it shattered the next morning when Maya discovered Sebastian's laptop open on his desk, displaying surveillance photos of Lily entering an upscale Miami hotel with a dark-haired man whose face was obscured from the camera. Sebastian found her there, his expression hardening into something cold and unreadable as he took in her position before his computer. That was private, he stated, shutting the laptop with a decisive click that seemed to echo the closing of the brief window of trust they'd shared. You know where she is, Maya accused, anger rising to replace the strange comfort she'd begun to feel in his presence. You've been tracking her all along, keeping me here as what? Bait? Leverage? Some twisted insurance policy? His silence was confirmation enough, and Maya felt a fool for the moment she'd let her guard down, for beginning to see him as something more than her captor. I want to leave, she stated, her voice shaking with suppressed emotion. Whatever game you're playing with my cousin, I won't be part of it. Sebastian moved to the window, his back to her as he gazed out at the city skyline. Antonio Vasquez killed my sister 3 years ago, he said, the revelation dropping into the silence between them like a stone. He walked free because key evidence disappeared, evidence your cousin stole and is now using to negotiate protection for herself. Maya felt the floor shift beneath her feet, the implications of his words striking her with physical force. Lily wouldn't. But even as she spoke, doubt crept in. Lily had always been drawn to dangerous men, to the thrill of walking edges that Maya avoided. The security alarm blared suddenly, red lights flashing as Marco burst through the door, gun drawn. Sir, perimeter breach, Vasquez's men. The words had barely left his mouth when the first explosion shook the building, shattering the moment of revelation with brutal reality. The next minutes blurred into chaos as Sebastian's security team mobilized with practiced efficiency. Marco wrapped a protective arm around Maya, shielding her body with his as they moved toward a concealed panic room behind the library bookshelves. The second explosion hit closer, sending tremors through the penthouse structure. Get her secure, Sebastian ordered, his voice transformed into something harder, colder than Maya had yet witnessed. He moved with deadly purpose toward a hidden safe, extracting weapons and what looked like classified documents with swift, practiced movements. Maya fought against Marco's guidance, her eyes locked on Sebastian. What's happening? She demanded, even as another explosion rocked the building and the lights flickered ominously. Is this because of Lily? Because of what she took? Sebastian crossed to her in 3 long strides, his hands gripping her shoulders with urgent intensity. Listen to me, Maya. Vasquez isn't just after the evidence. He wants to eliminate anyone who might testify against him. That includes you now, whether you know anything or not. Her hand went protectively to her belly as the baby kicked frantically, responding to her surge of adrenaline. I don't know anything, she protested, fear making her voice rise. I haven't spoken to Lily in months. Something flashed in Sebastian's eyes. Regret, perhaps, or something deeper he couldn't afford to acknowledge in this moment of crisis. It doesn't matter what you know. It matters what he thinks you might know. His thumb brushed her cheek in an unexpected gesture of tenderness. I won't let him hurt you or your child. The moment shattered as gunfire erupted from the floor below. The distinctive pop-pop-pop of automatic weapons punctuated by shouts in multiple languages. Sebastian pushed Maya firmly toward Marco. Extraction route, Charlie. The safe house in Westlake. I'll be right behind you. Marco guided her through a hidden service corridor that connected to a secure elevator at the building's core. As the doors slid closed, Maya caught a final glimpse of Sebastian arming himself, the businessman veneer completely gone, replaced by something far more lethal, a predator preparing to defend his territory. The elevator descended not to the lobby but to a subterranean garage where an armored SUV waited, engine running. Marco bundled her into the back seat, another security team member taking the wheel as they accelerated toward a service exit. Wait, Maya protested. Sebastian said he'd be right behind us. He'll meet us there, Marco assured her, though something in his voice suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. The SUV emerged onto rain-slicked streets, the weather mirroring the chaos they'd left behind as lightning split the night sky and thunder rumbled ominously overhead. As they sped through the deserted streets, Maya felt the first sharp pain low in her abdomen, a cramping that made her gasp and double over. Something's wrong, she whispered, panic rising as another pain, stronger than the first, radiated through her body. The baby. I think something's happening to the baby. Marco's face paled as he recognized the significance of her distress. Change of plans, he barked to the driver. St. Mary's Medical Center. Now. The SUV swerved sharply, tires squealing against wet pavement as they redirected toward the nearest hospital. Pain tore through Maya again, more intense this time, fear amplifying every sensation as she clutched her belly protectively. It's too early, she gasped between waves of cramping. 5 months is too early. Please, please don't let this happen. The hospital lights were harsh after the stormy darkness, medical staff swarming around Maya as she was rushed through emergency doors on a gurney. 26-year-old female, approximately 22 weeks pregnant, possible preterm labor, a nurse rattled off as another hooked up monitors to track both Maya's vitals and the baby's rapidly fluctuating heartbeat. Please save my baby, Maya begged the stern-faced doctor who appeared at her bedside, efficiently reviewing her chart before examining her with gentle but thorough hands. The cramping had intensified during the frantic drive, each wave stealing her breath and sending fresh terror coursing through her veins. We're going to do everything we can, the doctor assured her, already issuing orders for medication to halt the contractions. But I need you to try to calm down. Your stress level is making things worse. The irony of being told to calm down while fleeing armed attackers and going into premature labor wasn't lost on Maya. But she nodded desperately, willing to try anything. Hours passed in a haze of medication, monitoring, and moments of sheer terror whenever the baby's heartbeat faltered or another contraction gripped her despite the drugs flowing through her IV. Through it all, Marco remained a stoic presence at her door, weapon concealed but accessible, eyes constantly scanning for threats. Dawn was breaking when the door to Maya's room opened, and Sebastian entered, his appearance shocking her despite everything else she'd endured. Gone was the immaculate businessman. His expensive clothes were torn and bloodied, a makeshift bandage wrapped around his upper arm, his face bruised, but his eyes clear and focused as they landed on her. You're alive, she whispered, surprised by the wave of relief that washed through her at the sight of him, complex emotions she had no energy to examine competing with the more immediate concern for her baby. Vasquez's men won't be a problem anymore, he finished, the cold finality in his voice telling her everything she needed to know without details she was better off not having. He moved to her bedside, his uninjured hand covering hers where it rested protectively on her belly. The baby? The doctor entered before Maya could answer, bringing with her the first genuine good news in what felt like a lifetime. The contractions have stopped, and the fetal heartbeat has stabilized. You'll need complete bed rest for at least 2 weeks, but if you follow orders, there's every reason to believe you can carry to term. Relief made Maya lightheaded, tears springing to her eyes as she processed the doctor's words. My baby's going to be okay? She asked, needing to hear it again, to make it real in the midst of so much chaos and uncertainty. The doctor smiled, warmth breaking through her professional demeanor. With proper care and rest, yes, though I'd strongly recommend avoiding any more excitement. Her gaze shifted pointedly to Sebastian, who had the grace to look momentarily abashed beneath his injuries. When they were alone again, Sebastian pulled a chair close to Maya's bed, his movements betraying exhaustion and pain he was clearly trying to conceal. "Lily called," he said without preamble, watching her face carefully. "She heard about the attack and finally realized the danger she'd put you in." Maya's emotions twisted at the mention of her cousin. Anger, relief, betrayal, all competing for dominance. "Did she tell you where the evidence is? The proof against Vasquez?" The question seemed surreal coming from her lips, so far removed from the life she'd been living just days ago. Sebastian nodded, a weight seeming to lift from his shoulders, even as new lines of weariness etched themselves around his eyes. "She's turning everything over to federal authorities today. Vasquez will face justice for my sister, and for the others he's hurt. It's over, Maya." "So I can go home?" she asked, though the question felt hollow even as she spoke it. Home to what? Her apartment with its gas leak, her exhausting job that barely covered rent, the lonely struggle to prepare for a baby she'd have to raise entirely on her own? Something shifted in Sebastian's expression, vulnerability breaking through the carefully constructed facade he'd maintained, even through violence and injury. "You could," he acknowledged, his voice low. "Or you could stay, not as a hostage or leverage, but because I want you to. Because in the midst of all this chaos, I've come to care for you in ways I didn't think possible anymore." Maya studied his face, searching for deception, and finding only raw honesty in his eyes. "I barely know you," she whispered, though the words felt like a lie even as she spoke them. In crisis, people revealed their true selves, and she'd seen the core of who Sebastian was. Dangerous, yes, but also fiercely protective, principled in his own way, and capable of a tenderness that had surprised them both. "Then stay and get to know me," he said simply, his hand finding hers again, fingers intertwining with gentle pressure. "Stay and let me take care of you and your child, not because I'm trying to replace someone or recreate something I've lost, but because meeting you that night in the rain feels like the first right thing that's happened to me in years." Thank you all so much for following this story. If you're enjoying it, write in the comments which country you're watching from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video, because your support is important for me to continue here.